So in this episode, Bradford and I are going to talk about alibis, how people use them, what they tell us, and how to identify them. We're also going to talk about hedging, and we're going to talk about Dezi Freeman, the fugitive who was caught by Victoria Police this week. A lie is where you willfully mislead somebody, knowing that what you're saying is factually incorrect.
I think I lie very well for my profession.
What does a liar look like? What does a psychopath look like?
I just want to say I hope there's a lot of criminals listening to this. You'll be picking up some good tips.
Bradford, how are you today?
Quite well, Steve. Yourself?
Not too bad. It's been a very, very interesting week.
It has been a big week in the crime world, hasn't it?
It has. It's for those interstate and maybe international visitors or listeners or don't know anything about it. 2 police officers were murdered around about 7 months ago at a country residence in Porepunkah. One of them happened to be a friend of mine that I graduated with, my graduating squad. Very good operator. And this week, Monday, 8:30, Dezi Freeman met his maker. Dezi Freeman was the person believed to have shot both of them. Mind you, there was no one else there who would have done it. And the SOG executed...
The SOG?
The Special Operations Group, which is like a tactical area of the police department.
Like a SWAT.
Sieges, any volatile armed situations, hostage situations, terrorism, those type of things. Highly trained. Which sort of segues pretty much in today what we're going to talk about, and that is alibis. So there's no doubt that he would have had people protecting him, hence being on the run for 7 months. To be honest, I thought he was deceased somewhere. I thought he was never going to surrender voluntarily or quietly or peacefully. And we saw that when the Special Operations Group... Now, I've had dealings with the Special Operations Group when I was in the job, and I'll tell you that story a little bit later, but they are the best of the best, and they do not suffer fools gladly. And
that's not entirely true, because I've done a gig for them because they have a charity that they support.
Yep.
And, I got to do a show for them so that they suffered this fool. But,
that's a different type of fool.
Professionally, I understand. Yeah.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, we did get an inquiry from a Darren. I spoke about hedging, and we're not talking financial terms. We're talking about when somebody may be caught in a corner and they have been lying, and they tend to hedge their bets. And they may use alibis to protect themselves from being exposed or being caught in a deception or lie. And we see alibis used often by criminals to try to protect themselves, and their friends will often, make up stories to say that, they were there at the time when they may not have. And, of course, it's up to the detectives investigating the case to disprove the alibi. And, of course, it's not that hard to do these days because phones are used as almost electronic leashes. If I wanted to follow your movements or see where you've been in the last 24 hours, or maybe I don't, it's pretty easy to track your movements, toll gantries, receipts, banks, ATMs. You may purchase stuff from Bunnings and whatnot. It's quite a painstaking experience, insofar as the time taken. And I remember, one very big investigation where 2 other police were murdered, Silk and Miller, 2 Victorian police, and they only had fragments of rear tail light. And, of course, they had to painstakingly put that together to try to work out what the scenario was. But, of course, alibis, what's your definition of alibi? And I'll go into the criminal alibi context.
All right. So I looked into it because alibi is from the Latin word meaning elsewhere.
Yeah.
So that I realised that alibi refers to being able to prove that you weren't at the scene of the crime.
Yep.
Whereas previously I thought, if you said to the teacher, a dog ate my homework, that was an alibi, but it's not. It's an excuse. An alibi does specifically, am I right, relate to your whereabouts and proving where you were in relation to the crime.
That's
hopefully away.
So technically, if let's say you just happen to walk down the street and I don't know, accidentally steal something, and
as you do,
as you do, and I'm nowhere in sight, but you come over and you go, "Hey, Van Apps, Steve-O, I need you to, be an alibi for me. I need you to tell the coppers that we were drinking together at the hotel down in Clarendon Street." And I go, "Yeah, okay." But of course, depending on my involvement, that can also create a situation where I could be potentially charged with an accessory, depending on what the information is. So if I've helped you commit a crime, which is aiding and abetting in the commission, or conspired, they're two separate offences under the Crimes Act. So that means we get together, we plan your little theft or robbery or whatever it may be, and then I supply the getaway car and the balaclavas and the gloves and everything else for, the theft of the ice cream or whatever you're stealing.
Oh, yeah.
Then I've taken an active part, and technically under the Crimes Act, depends on what extent my involvement is, I can be charged as a principal in the first degree.
Right.
But of course, after the act, and this is what we saw with Dezi Freeman, the fugitive who shot and killed two police, he was on the run for some time. And of course, he was actually found by the Special Operations Group 150 kilometres away from where the shooting took place. And of course, there was quite an extensive air and ground search. They had Godiva dogs, they did acoustic tests and all sorts of things. And as a result, they really didn't have any other evidence, cooperative evidence at that stage. But of course, they used listening devices and telephone intercepts, hoping that his wife may have received a phone call, any evidence that could be collected. But there is no doubt in my mind that he had help in escaping from the location. And now Victoria Police are hot on the heels of anyone who may have helped in creating a potential alibi.
But again, that's not an alibi. That's aiding and abetting after the fact, isn't it? Or is
correct?
And is it providing false information, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a false report if you knowingly make a report, but this is more by omission. So it's actually helping somebody rather than lying to cover for someone.
So just getting back to hedging, something I neglected to say. So when this was brought up, I thought they said edging. Which is a different thing. Edging, I believe, is a sexual thing where, what is it?
This is your department.
Well, I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, where you're on the edge of orgasm and you're holding off and trying to heighten the pleasure, which leads me to
It's a bit interesting segue.
Well, yeah, I have to make this clear. Somebody queried me about when I said the Richard Kalinsky, the serial killer, hooked up with another serial killer.
Psychopath, yeah.
Yeah, because that, to the younger people, hook up means get together sexually. And no, they did not. What I meant there to clear that up was in this rare occurrence to psychopaths, to people who, were murder for hire, basically, managed to find each other, meet each other, and outside, say, an organisation and compare notes.
Which is statistically rare because they tend to work on their own.
Yeah, so it's not unusual, say, in the mafia or in a organised crime situation that, you would find one there because they actively recruit people. But this was a random chance meeting in the book anyway. There was random.
No romance.
Yeah, no romance, no edging, no hooking up per se.
So I want to tell you the story, my experience with the Special Operations Group, and these are no-nonsense sort of guys. I was doing a course, it was called the Force Building Entry Course.
You love a course, don't you? You've done a lot of courses.
I've done a lot of courses. I'm a perennial student. And anyway, this was called the Forced Building Entry Course, and as a detective, you often have to kick doors in and get in there quickly. And there's a certain methodology, which for operational purposes, I'm not going to go into detail, but suffice to say, during this course, I was selected to go into, and back in those days, I don't know if it's still there, but in the academy, there was this area, it was actually on the roof of the academy, it's quite a big building, and it was basically made to look like a house, and it had doors, like very heavily fortified doors, and you literally had to sledge the doors to go in, and there was a certain methodology that you would follow, which I won't go into detail, but nonetheless, I was asked to, and I had a 38 with
Pistol?
paint balls, literally. So not lead, but paintballs. And they said, you can go in there and you can secrete yourself anywhere within that house, and the SOG are going to raid the house. And you, at any stage, if you want to take any shots at them, feel free. And I thought, okay, well, you don't get to do this every day. You don't get to challenge the best of the best, sons of God, as they're referred to. And, of course, I'm thinking they're going to throw in percussion grenades and all sorts of loud bang sticks and all that type of thing to disorientate. So they've got the edge, or put gas in there, and I don't have a gas mask. So there was even though I probably know a little bit more than the average schmo, I didn't know how they were going to execute, and they have the element of surprise. So I decided I was going to lay down on the floor with my pistol pointing directly at the first person, the first SOG member that comes through that door. I'm laying down, and the reason I was laying down, smaller surface area, because when you go through the police, the first thing, if somebody's attacking you or you've got a weapon or something, they always train you to aim for the largest body mass. Not the hand, because the largest body mass is easier to hit than a hand. And a lot of guys I used to go the pistol range were not that good shots. But anyway, so I'm laying down thinking this is going to be perfect. I have a very small surface area. I don't know how many are going to come through that door, but I did have a mask. So I had imagine this, a Perspex mask covering my face. And I had 6 rounds that I could shoot at any time I chose. Then I thought, oh no, I think a better idea might be to hide behind the couch. I can then rest my arm and the revolver, back in those days, and then just shoot them as they come in. So next minute I hear, please don't move. Bang, bang, bang. I'm thinking, what the hell? Anyway, I'm waiting and I've got my pistol trained on the door. And I kid you not, 8 of these guys come in. And all that happened was bang, 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 bang. My mask was covered in paint. I did not get one round off before they shot me.
Right.
That's how good they are.
Well, I know they're referred to the sons of God, but I wondered if that's because whenever they come through the door, people go, Jesus.
Well, if you're a crook at 4 o'clock in the morning, I've watched these guys. They're so patient. Yeah. I remember we did an exercise, and once again, I won't give away too many operational secrets, but they would lay in wait in bitterly cold temperatures for hours upon hours upon hours waiting. And a lot of my friends who were in SOG, and a lot of who tried to get in there, and that's another issue altogether. Very difficult to get in. They have a pre-screening. They'll get you to run around, do sit-ups, eat cakes, and wash it down with Coke.
Back in cakes.
Yeah, but not doing sit-ups after it and then push-ups after it and whatnot. So not a lot of people. In fact, the numbers that get through are very, very small. So they are very highly trained, very highly skilled, and I would not want to come up against them, because the operation in relation to Dezi Freeman, as you probably saw, they had I think it's called the Bearcat special armoured vehicle, where they literally drove it up and they gassed him out. He'd come out in a doona, secretly holding a pistol.
It's not really your Ned Kelly, is it?
Not quite. not the same body armour, that's for sure.
Wrapped in a doona.
Wrapped in a doona. I don't know if it was down, but nonetheless, he was exterminated. Okay,
well, that's interesting. Where this is fabulous that we have these insights in. he could have been elsewhere, and that would have been an alibi, and that's what we're talking about today. So getting back to alibis, so it's interesting that there's a number of factors that can be checked, isn't there? Do you want to take us through that?
Well, let's have a look at the more common alibis. Firstly, what I would call the unsupported alibi. I was at home watching TV. That's pretty weak.
Yeah.
Okay. So I interviewed a guy once for a rape, and at the time the rape happened, he said that he was watching television. This is during the interview. I said, "What were you watching?" He said, "Hey, it's Saturday." And I said, "Right. What time at the time it was 7:15 p.m. or something when the alleged assault happened." I said, "Can you remember what was on?" He said, "Red Faces," which for all our listeners, Red Faces was basically a thing where they'd have 3 or 4 acts come on and whatnot. And I said, "Describe the acts that were on the show."
Yeah.
And so he used that as an alibi. I was at home watching television, but of course when I questioned him about what was on that, so I then went and saw Pam Barnes, I think her name, the producer, and got the rundown, the run sheet.
Wow.
So disproved that alibi. So usually those type of alibis are very weak, got no witnesses, no digital trails or anything like that.
That's a poor effort.
And no verifiable detail.
Yeah, okay.
Then you got the social alibi.
Yeah.
Different types of alibis. I was with a friend. Now, this is where you're hoping your friend might support you, like the example I used before. So it relies on another person to confirm the actual story. But, of course, here's where it gets interesting. Let's just say the alibi said, "Oh, look, I'll support you." Well, then the first thing we're going to do is to check out the story, separate them. And then we're going to ask them the story, and we're going to look for inconsistencies, contradictions, anything that doesn't add up. And it doesn't take long before there are little chinks, because often people who are there will know, they'll know what the conversation was about, and they'll literally cooperate each other. Whereas if you're making it up,
chinks in the armour. Yeah.
Well, little inconsistencies in their story. So that's more used when people are trying to protect each other. Then there's the digital alibi, or the digi-alibi, as people like to call it.
I'll just take you back to that, because I think you mentioned in a previous episode too that there can be a problem getting an alibi because people might have been doing something naughty elsewhere.
You mean cheating?
Yeah, so cheating. Like, for example, I this is a little bit elaborate, but I filmed a DVD special at the Comics Lounge back in 2007. And so there was 400 people there, and I said, "Look, at the start, you're going to be on camera. So if you are here with somebody you're not meant to be with."
It sounds like a Coldplay moment.
Well, I anticipated that by about nearly 20 years, because I handed out little kind of 30-centimetre strips of black cardboard for people to stick over the eyes in case. Well, it's early technology.
Very early technology.
But you can see that the problem would be that if I was with somebody I was not meant to be with, and they have to provide an alibi for me, they're going to get themselves into trouble because they're cheating on a partner. So but it's still
that's an episode in itself,
right?
Cheating partners and alibis, but we'll cover maybe that at a later stage.
It also sounds like a country and western song.
It does.
Cheating partners and alibis.
So just get back to the digital alibis. I like when people try to use digital alibis, like, "Oh, I was at home on the internet," or "I was, watching YouTube," or whatever it is. Well, all I need to do is seize that computer that they say they're on, and computer forensics can go through that, work out time stamps, date stamps, and we used this when we're investigating allegations of child sexual abuse and whatnot. You can delete things, but there are forensic specialists who can bring them back, even though they think so. A digital alibi is good because very easy to disprove if you've got access to the devices, iPads, iPhones, computers, laptops, desktops.
But there still then needs to be proof that you were the one operating that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not hard to do in some cases because, you'd be looking at CCTV footage. We can track where the phone is at certain periods of time and so on. So usually most people, take their phones with them. But there are other ways, CCTV witnesses, knock on doors, corroborate it by, if they've only got a password to enter a certain website, who else would know? It's all circumstantial, but it can also corroborate itself.
So that would have been the old school thing back in your early days when we didn't have as much CCTV.
Oh, yeah. Now we've got dash cams. Everyone's got a dash cam. Everyone's got a phone. I mean, you look at the news these days. People are there before news crews and news teams, and they're filming on their iPhones or whatever, Samsungs. And they're actually collecting. So, I mean, now when you think about it, there's CCTV footage everywhere, or cameras. There's the phones. There's, speed cameras. We are getting to a stage where, it's very hard to not be seen when we go out in public.
Yeah, well,
which is great from an investigative viewpoint. And I guess there's two arguments there. Well, is our freedom being curtailed, or is our privacy being stamped on, or the other side of that, well, is if it can be used as evidence and people are doing the right thing, then that's a good thing. But having said that, there's a lot of home invasions here in Victoria, Australia, where there's heaps of CCTV footage, but it's not stopping the behaviour. They're still, putting balaclavas or hoodies on and still smashing into people's houses.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the day. It'll be a plot in Law and Order or something like that where somebody is actually caught out because they're going to be in the back of somebody else's selfie. Just going, delete it.
Yeah. And then there's what I call the over-detailed alibi. Now, this is where people feel the need. They've got to give you heaps and heaps of information. And so usually what we see is a truthful person when they're recalling historical events. They will be able to tell you feelings, but they'll also use sensory input. So they'll tell you what they saw, what they smelled. They're taking in their environment because they're living through it. Whereas often if you're not there, that's the last thing you think of. You're thinking of, how do I tell a story that's believable and credible? So it creates, like I mentioned in the past, cognitive load. So it takes a lot of processing power to sound believable and credible. And of course, it's very difficult to make up those feelings and emotions that you weren't privy to because you're fabricating those stories. So usually you'll find alibis, over-detailed alibis that are way too good.
Right.
Whereas truthful people often make mistakes when they're recalling information. Whereas deceptive people will prepare, and you can prepare, but sooner or later we're going to look for either alibi evidence, scientific, medical, or cooperative evidence.
Can you think of an instance where you've caught somebody out? I know you did with that, presumably with that rapist, but have you caught somebody in a lie, or have you gone and disproven their alibi?
Oh, yeah, geez, I just about I think I remember once I was working with a police detective and he said to me, he said, I hate when I get lied to. I said, you're in the wrong job.
Yes.
So, we used to get lied to all the time. So, yeah, that's not a new phenomenon. But, yeah, often I would – and you know what? I'm sure you've had this happen to you. You go out somewhere, you're speaking to someone and you've got this gut feel, this perception, this intuition. You go, this doesn't feel right. This guy's full of BS. You had that? Okay. So – we all have that innate ability, okay? But, of course, I'm looking for evidence. So it's all right to have a gut feel, but, I can go to a crime scene. I can tell you in minutes whether it's organised or disorganised. I can tell you whether, the offender spent time with the victim, post-mortem, moved the body, all that type of thing. But often I'll go into the crime scene with a belief or an opinion, and then I'll look for evidence to corroborate it. And sometimes we may not have that evidence to corroborate it. So that's why cold cases are the hardest cases to solve, and serial killer investigations too, because often there's no nexus between the offender and the victim.
So, right, okay. So
and if you look at most homicides, they're domestic related. 92% of all homicides, the offender knows the victim and vice versa.
Yeah.
Whereas, serial killers
Nearest and
stalk
dearest.
their victims, and half the time, not in all cases, the victims are not aware. So the reason it's so difficult because there's no connection, no nexus, no common ground. But yeah, they're the hardest investigations you'll.
That's right. Did I mention in a previous episode that I shoplifted once from Target?
I think it was more than once, wasn't it?
No, it was just the once.
Tell me.
It was just the once. Where did I mention that? Where my mate, I was about 14. My mates dared me, and they said, "What do you mean you've never shoplifted?" And I said, "I've never done it." They said, "Go now." We were at the Golden Bowl in Camberwell on Friday night. They said, "Go now. Go to Target and shoplift something." And I felt compelled to fit in, so I went, and I was absolutely terrified. And I came back and they said, "Did you do it?" And I went, "Yeah." And they said, "What'd you get?" And I said, "I don't know."
You don't know what you stole.
Yeah. And so I pulled it out of my pocket. It was a bottle opener, which was, so on brand. But I think all the way up to going back to my mates, had the police intercepted me in midst crime of the century, they would have said, "Did you steal something?" I said, "I'm not sure."
That's why they had what they call the shop stealing warning notice, where if it was under, I can't remember, it used to be under 500 or something, whatever it was, and it was a first time offence, you just basically get a caution without having to go to court.
Oh, well, I used to work. I ended up working at that Target in Camberwell while I was in school, and I regularly saw school friends in the back of the divvy van heading down to Camberwell Police Station to get their warning.
Yeah.
Could you not come into where I'm working? I can get you a bottle opener.
So another alibi I want to bring up is what I call the partial alibi. Something like, I was at the gym earlier that night. Now, what's happening there, they only account for part of the timeline. So I look for the full timeline. So I'll say what happened from, let's say whatever the crime is happened at 7:15. I'll say, tell me what happened from, say, 4 up until 10 p.m. And the reason being is what you'll find is they'll give you a lot of content, information, structure and detail about what happened before or after, but not during. And one of the things I'll look for in witness statements is usually, and this is what I call an open narrative statement. Now, police here in Victoria, America's a little bit different. What happens is they'll say, all right, tell us what happened, write down everything that happened. Now, what will happen is in depending on their literacy, but they'll always have an introduction, what happened, and a conclusion. And usually I look for feelings, thoughts and emotions in that as well. So usually people will fast forward through time sequencing and events to take you away from that particular area. So always look out for partial alibis.
Right. So how easy is it to unpick, say, a witness? Because I imagine that's a weak link where if I say, I say to my friend, "Listen, can you give me an alibi for Friday night?" And they go, "Well, yeah, what do you need to say?" And just say, "I was with you and we were, playing poker," or something like that. How quickly are you going to unpick that?
Well, I would, if you just said I was with a friend, I'd want to know more than that. I'd want to know what time you went there, how long you were there for, who was there, what you were doing, what time you arrived, what time you left, and then because that, once again, that takes a lot of cognitive load because you're creating a false memory that never existed.
Yeah.
Right? And we know that when we're recalling historical events from memory, it only uses one part of our brain. Now, under MRI scanning, when we're fabricating or creating a false story that never existed, we use several parts of our brain because we want it to sound believable and credible.
Yeah.
So then once I get that first story, I would go and speak to the alibi person and I'd want to see if there are inconsistencies in that. And often it doesn't take much to see when they're making it up or their stories are not consistent.
Is it feasible then you could rehearse your alibi that you
Of course. Yeah, of course.
You could do everything one Friday night and so that you've both got a real memory. But
well, that may be the case, but still, if an incident has occurred, you will still draw, and I see this a lot. Let's just say you're at a pub on a particular night. You do that every Friday night. You'd be able to tell me, the details of the pub. Sorry, but that doesn't tell me anything. I want to know about the incident. So once again, we would go back to the incident. I was drinking. Well, I would then look for corroborative evidence. I'd go check the CCTV footage out. I would. I've done this before, gone back on the same night because you usually get regulars there. Say, did you see Bradford drinking last Friday at 7 p.m? Oh, yeah, he was, but I noticed that he went out, left at about 7:15. How long was he gone for? And you'd be surprised what information. And, of course, most CCTV have time and date stamps, so it'd see you going in and going out. And then, we'd take out warrants, look through your bank accounts to see if you've purchased anything, ATM, put you at the scene or a location close to the scene. And look, sometimes you may have DNA evidence at a crime scene, but that just shows that you may have been there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've committed the offence.
Yeah.
So any good detective won't just rely on one piece of evidence. They'll look for any piece of evidence they can get.
There's no necessarily date stamp on DNA, is there?
No, not at all. In fact, for my show, I interviewed a professor who specialised in DNA, secondary DNA, and all that type of thing. And there is even a type of testing. Don't quote me. I think it's mitochondria, where they can actually replicate the DNA if they've got a very small sample, and it can be dried. It can be in existence for very long periods of time. One of the episodes we worked on was Mr. Cruel. And there was DNA found on some of the bindings of one of the victims, and there's also separate DNA on at another crime scene. So, it's all strong corroborative evidence, scientific.
Yeah, well,
you know what they say about scientific evidence? It never lies.
Yeah, well,
witnesses make mistakes, but scientific evidence, unless, like we saw in the Jaden Lesky murder. There was DNA evidence found on Jaden's bib, which actually was cross-contaminated at Forensic Science Laboratory in McLeod. So rape victims' DNA somehow was found on a separate case, a child that had been in a dam for nearly a year.
Oh my goodness.
So once again, it comes down to, and usually this is why we have our court system. If there's, the whole idea of our court system is predicated on the basis the evidence will be tested.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember O.J. Simpson.
Yes.
There was a lot of forensic problems there. And I actually sat in part of that trial when I was there because I spent some time with LAPD Robbery Homicide Division. And
doing another course, were we?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a course. I was trying to get my skill sets up, Bradley. Bradford.
Ooh,
I made that mistake.
Two.
Yes, just for our listeners, it's Bradford, not Bradley. Bradford.
Yes.
Sorry, my apologies.
Okay, so I guess that's once again maybe the tip of the iceberg, but we've probably given some people some pretty good tips on how to.
Look, I often see this and hear this. They say, is it possible that, crooks can learn? I like to take people back to when CSI. Remember CSI, that television show?
Yep.
Crime scene investigation. People say, they see the sort of things are going to tell crooks and show crooks how to, what they can do and what they can get away with. Well, firstly, I remember going to a burglary. And the guy took off his rubber glove and turfed it, thinking, well, they're not going to lift fingerprints from a rubber glove.
Yeah.
We lifted fingerprints from a rubber glove. Yeah. So some crooks, I put crooks in two categories. The smart crooks never get caught, never talk about it, and the dumb crooks that often get caught and have to, boast about it.
What percentage is it?
Oh, I would say it's hard to quantify, but I think the dumb crooks are the ones that in the 60, 70 percentile plus.
Yeah, right.
The good ones don't have to brag about it and don't.
All right, then. Well, I'm glad we're going to wrap this up. That people should know that I think you're working in China.
Yes, I'm doing some work over there, which I might be able to talk about when I get back. I'm not too sure at this stage. Otherwise, I may not get back. Our producer used to live in China, and we don't want to upset the Chinese.
All right, we'll just leave
audience.
the name of 3 of your colleagues and names of 3 of your colleagues that I could contact.
And get my will in order.
Yeah, indeed. Well, yeah, bon voyage, and
Thank you.
We'll catch you next episode.
You certainly will. Take care.
Thank you. Good. I just want to say I hope there's a lot of criminals listening to this. You'll be picking up some good tips.